Hi everybody, welcome back to Goodnight Lighthouse. I'm Miss Dorothy and I'm here to read you another story. I got a really interesting book tonight. Very fun, very unusual. And the name of it is Extra Yarn. Extra yarn. Do you know what yarn is? Yarn is like string, but when you put it all together, you knit it all together, it becomes like clothes. Like your sweaters are made out of yarn, shirts are made out of yarn, mittens are made out of yarn, and this book is called Extra Yarn. It's about a little girl who starts knitting things and has a whole bunch of extra yarn. So she starts using it for all kinds of unusual things. This is going to be a fun book. We've got a lot to learn in this book. Are you ready to get inside this book with Miss Dorothy? Good. I need you to sit up and listen up because here we go. Extra Yarn, written by Mac Barnett, illustrated by Jon Klassen. On a cold afternoon, in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys, Annabelle found a box filled with yarn of every color. Oh, look, there's Annabelle out in the snow. So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars, too. But there was still extra yarn. Look at how colorful her sweater is. And then she made one for her dog. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You two look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate, who doesn't seem to be very nice. But it turned out he was jealous. After she made a sweater for Nate and his dog, and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. Wow, there's a lot of yarn in that box. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet!" shouted Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone. Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," Annabelle said, "so they won't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." But it turned out she could. And she did. Even for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. Wow! She made sweaters for everybody in the school, even the teacher, and still had more yarn. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton, and Mrs. Pendleton, and for Dr. Palmer, and for little Lewis. Wow, so many sweaters, so much yarn. She made sweaters for everyone, except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and who would stand in his shorts with the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat. And even then, Annabelle still had extra yarn. Wow. She made sweaters for all the dogs and all the cats, and for the other animals too. Soon Annabelle will run out of yarn. Look, all the dogs, the cats, the rabbit, the bear. But it turned out she didn't run out of yarn. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters, like the mailbox and the birdhouse and her house. Wow, everything's looking colorful now. It's not all white and black anymore. Things began to change in that little town. Look at how colorful it is, all because of her yarn. News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand. One day an archduke, who was very fond of clothes, sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. Ooh, what does he want? "Little girl," said the archduke,
I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1 million. Wow, that's a lot of money. No, thank you, said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The Archduke's mustache twitched. $2 million, he said. Annabelle shook her head. No, thanks. $10 million, shouted the Archduke. Take it or leave it. Leave it, said Annabelle. I won't sell the yarn. And she didn't. She really likes her yarn. It's worth a lot more to her than money. So that night the Archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house, and they stole the box of yarn and took it to the Archduke, who set across off the snow and sailed over the sea. Oh no! Somebody stole the box of yarn! He went back to his castle. The Archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair. Then he took out the box, and he lifted its lid, and he looked inside. And it was empty! His mustache quivered, it shivered, it trembled. The Archduke hurled the box out the window and shouted, Little girl, I curse you with my family curse. You will never be happy again. Oh, no! But the box of yarn fell on a piece of ice, and it floated, and it floated, right back to the little girl. And it turned out she was happy as she sat there knitting a sweater for the tree.
Wow! She could knit anything. Look! She knit covers and sweaters for the entire tree. She was knitting things for cars and buses and houses and people. But then that man came and he wanted her box of yarn because it was special and it never ran out of yarn. And they stole it. Why would they steal it? Stealing is such a terrible thing to do. They stole it and he took it back to his castle. And when he opened it up, no yarn, because nothing good comes out of doing something bad like stealing. So he didn't get any yarn. And then he got mad and he said that the little girl, he wanted bad things to happen to her. He didn't want her to ever be happy again. But then she got her yarn back, and guess what? She was happy. She was happy with her box of extra yarn. This was a fun book, very different from some of the books we read, but it was a lot of fun. I don't know how to knit like she was doing, where she was making sweaters and stuff out of yarn. I don't know how to do that. Do you know somebody who knows how to do that? Some grandmas know how to do that. Some moms know how to do that. Miss Dorothy doesn't know how to do it, but it would be fun to learn. When you grow up, if you want to, you can learn how to knit sweaters, and maybe you'll get a box of extra yarn. But not tonight. Tonight it's time for you to get under your blanket, which might be made out of yarn. Get under your blanket, get cuddled up, curled up, ready for a really good night's sleep. And tomorrow, when you're out playing, if you find a box of extra yarn, maybe somebody can teach you how to knit. You never know. But what I do know is that whatever you're doing tomorrow, obey, and obey right away. And then come back and see Miss Dorothy. I'm going to be sitting right here, ready to read another book to you. Bye! Thanks for reading with Miss Dorothy. I hope you enjoyed this book, and I hope you'll come back soon to read another. What's your favorite book? Drop Miss Dorothy a note and let me know. I'll go find it and I'll read it to you. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you soon.